do it live.
Howdy, partner. Welcome to the Cinematic Lounge. How's it going, Chris?
It's going real well, Ralph.
I got my trusty,
Red Rider. Nice.
With the compass in the stock.
Exactly.
Yes, in case you hadn't noticed, we're going to do the 5 Westerns. These are the 5 films that Chris and I thought we would like to talk about.
Yeah.
Again, no particular order.
Nope.
Partner.
Exactly.
It's just the 5 that we wanted to talk about. I've got them set up. Oh, look at it. I got me on the screen. Don't need that. I've got them set up so that we can, it'll just pop in the screen and we talk about the one that comes up.
No, that's perfect.
Now, I know we both probably look like, is there a cowboy in the YMCA, in the Village People? I know there's a cop, a construction worker. Is there a cowboy?
No, I think there's an Indian/Native American guy.
Right. Okay, I thought there was a cowboy, maybe not.
There might be a cowboy.
One thing I did notice.
Maybe it depends on the night.
As I rewatched a couple of these films, cowboy movies are kind of gay. Kind of gay. Those guys out in the camp, they're out in their sleeping bags. There's a lot of. I know in the Wild Bunch there was some gayness in that.
Well, I mean, I think
inferred, not shown, but inferred.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think with the Wild, I mean, we could get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but I just want to say, dressed like this, I definitely feel a little.
Well, that's
like I could fit in the Village People cowboy or the singing cowboy.
But I'm going to throw this out here. Yeah. If you can't see it on the cameras, guys, that is a phenomenal shirt. It's fabulous.
Well, I mean, you can see the fringes. I mean, it's beautiful. So, all right, let me just put the old Red Rider down in case any varmints come in here.
Exactly.
Or any bandits, or hooligans.
Yeah,
all right,
outlaws.
So as the 5 works, we picked 5. I put them on the computer in no particular order, and then as it pops up, we talk. Now, one thing I did want to say is, if you haven't seen these movies, we're going to spoil them.
Yes.
We got a little pushback on the last show.
Maybe we should cut back on the spoilers.
No, I just put spoilers up there and we talk about
let
it.
them know.
There's no reason not to talk. I mean, again, most of these are very old.
Most of the good Westerns are.
That's right.
Well, you know what's so funny is and we'll get to this, but like when we say very old now, it's funny. Like I think people think the 90s are old, but like not really. Not to me.
We're talking 70, whatever. Most of these were made. Well, the couple we have are 69.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how similar some of these are to each other. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Wild Bunch, which casting in the Sundance Kid. We're not talking about that one.
Right, yeah.
I mean, that should be on the list. See, the problem with this list, the 5, is we can only pick 5.
Yeah, and the truth is, especially
otherwise we'd be here all night.
Yeah, if you talk about a Western or a genre like Westerns that has literally been around since the beginning of movies and was for many, many years in this country, the most popular genre out there.
Yeah. Wasn't the first one the Great Train Robbery? That was one of the very first.
That was one of the very first.
And people
movies.
were freaking out because the train was coming at them at the screen.
Plus, the guy shoots the gun right at the camera.
Right.
People were scared that the bullets were going to get him.
Yeah, and then Scorsese used that in one of his movies. I think Casino or Goodfellas.
Goodfellas. There's a scene where Joe Pesci shoots right at the camera. Yeah.
So all right, so we're gonna talk about the 5. We'll pop it up on the old computer and see what happens.
Let me wash down a little of that trail dust.
Get some of that trail dust off your throat. Yeah, I'm a little parched. All right, here we go. First one. Okay.
Well, you know what's funny? I'll tell you a little story.
Please, while
as we're drinking beer, it always reminds me of. There's a scene in Rio Bravo with John Wayne. One of the guys is like an alcoholic, and their suggestion is that he just drink beer instead.
Yeah, that'll solve the problem.
They're like,
those guys.
At one point, he's drinking beer, and they're like, isn't that beer at least helping?
As I watch these films, the thing that always gets in my head is how long they're out in wherever they're out.
Oh, yeah.
And their clothes, obviously, the clothes are the same because it's a movie. I get it. But you start thinking about how dirty they must be and how they
but that's the thing. Like in real life, man, these guys, they didn't pack a lot of change of clothes when they went on a cattle drive.
All right.
Anyway.
So here we go.
All right, let's hit it.
Oh,
my God.
I already hit it. Everybody saw it before you did.
Anyway.
All right, so go ahead. I just rewatched this one last night.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh,
and,
so awesome.
Okay, there's some things I want to talk about, but go ahead. Tell me what your feelings are.
So I had seen The Wild Bunch. My brother was a big fan of Westerns. My older brother was a big fan of Westerns. I was never a huge Western guy when I was younger. And then I had seen The Wild Bunch. And then at one point, I came back to it in college. It was about the time that the official director's cut was released. And one weekend, I happened to find myself in Boston, Massachusetts, of all places. And my friends were up there, and they were going to some conference. They were in college or whatever, and I just kind of tagged along. and the Wild Bunch was playing, like the director's cut of the Wild Bunch. I was like, oh, I'll go check that out, man. And seeing it on the big screen, I said it before, it was like a religious experience.
Yeah, I'm
So
going to
amazing.
mention that when we talk about one of the movies we have up here that I think, and it's a movie that most directors cite is the one that got them interested in movies,
Yes.
and I think it has to do with seeing it on the big screen.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, because most of these were shot in VistaVision or super wide screen.
yeah.
And I guess as a kid, if you walk into a place and see these, it's just going to blow your mind.
Yeah, it really is.
And I imagine this one, including the fact that this is the first time they showed a bunch of violence.
Well, not only did they show a bunch of violence, but it was very, let's just say real.
Really,
it was more
shot in slow
realistic.
motion.
Yeah.
You know,
And there was a
that
lot
helps
of squibs and blood.
Yeah, and I also read that normally they would have that sound effect of a bullet being fired. Pew pew pew, and the director, who's the director?
Sam Peckinpah.
Sam Peckinpah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Was like, no. We're gonna have the realistic sound of whatever the thing they're shooting. We're gonna try to simulate it as much as we can. We're gonna make that sound. So, and the slow motion.
Yeah.
So
his use of slow motion. It's funny. I actually read a biography of him by a guy named David Weedle, and understandably, the name of the biography is "If They Move, Kill Them," which is one of the
famous
lines early on in this movie.
William Holden.
Yeah, and what happens is that in this movie, one of the reasons why this movie really shook people, because it came out in like 1969, I think.
Yep.
And it was funny. It stars William Holden and Ernest Borgnine and Robert Ryan, guys that had done plenty of westerns. People thought they were going to be in for almost like a romp. I think like an action-packed western romp.
Right. Ben Johnson, Strother Martin. Yeah.
Yeah. And what happened was they got hit right in the mouth with Sam's idea of the West, which was not at all what they had been seeing.
Right.
It revamped the West. It took a whole new take on cinematic
Okay, what does it mean it
violence.
revamped the West? Because John Wayne complained that this ruined Western films.
He did.
So what did it do to revamp the West? It made it more gritty, or what?
Well, I think two things. A, it makes it much more gritty, but I'm going to say it's more realistic in the sense that, for one of the things is when somebody gets shot, they really get shot.
Yeah, they always look painful.
Right. And these guys were outlaws, and there's a great scene where William Holden, the leader of the band, in a basically a robbery gone wrong, that turns into a trap at the very beginning of the film, he basically tramples a woman to death. And when he rides off, he still has her shawl on his spur, and he just picks it up and throws it down like it's not even there.
Yeah.
There's just a certain level of nihilism in this film.
Oh yeah.
But also as you watch it and it goes along, like, this may sound bad, but like, there's a scene where two of the Gorch brothers, Ben Johnson and Warren Oates, right? They play brothers, and they were like, hey, they get really drunk at this like Mexican warlord's hacienda, and they're like, we want some women. And so two of the less attractive women show up, and they have a fantastic time.
Was that the one in the wine vats?
Yeah, and they were shooting the things and drinking the beer or wine or whatever.
Yeah, those are real sex workers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the point is that, like, and I remember watching this with some buddies of mine, telling them, and they were just like, ugh. And I was like, dude, if you've been out riding the range for 3 or 4 months, you're not going to be too particular.
Right.
Right.
And
it was just one of those things where it was like, but it was I felt like it was very realistic,
Definitely realism was involved. I don't know how realistic.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to say it's realistic because there's such. Yeah, it's a movie. So they're
But it had.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it does have the overall arching idea of the film and it doesn't splash it up there. In some ways it does, but is the idea that the West is closing. It actually takes place in like 1911 or 1914 or something like that. But it's the idea that the West is closing.
Yeah.
And that these are men who have outlived their time.
Right. And the Mexican bandits had cars that they're driving around.
Yeah.
Dragon Angel with the car.
And they have a machine gun.
I saw telephone poles up, right? That along the train thing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
they
I
talk
guess
about
that's
airplanes.
Yeah. So I guess that's what Wayne was talking about. Was it just kind of ruined the mythos of what he was used to?
Well, sure,
So,
and it also
he
it
sounds
ruined
like
the
he was
idea.
a bit of a downer, but whatever.
But it ruined the idea of it ruined what he had, what he was like.
Right.
So much, the John Wayne. I'm the Duke, and don't get me wrong, I love John Wayne movies, but like, it was this kind of sanitized version.
Yeah.
Where the madam of the local, brothel is Miss Kitty, know, and let's be real. I mean, I know that's Gunsmoke, but but the point is that that's not at all really a realistic, like there's just a great, like just an awful scene in this movie where like, they're arguing like with these sex workers that they've just slept, and it's really just
over money,
right? Over the money, and that at the very end, that's when Pike just looks at these guys and he goes, "Let's go."
Well, he just finished his with his sex worker,
and
who there was a little baby sleeping next to them, and that's when they decide to take the walk and do the,
and they just decide that they're going to go get their buddy who.
But Ernest Borgnine left him there. Like that whole scene.
Well, Ernest Borgnine it's an interesting thing. I've read a lot of things about this movie, and they talk about how it's like a de facto family, with Holden as the father, with Borgnine as the mother, and then the Gorch brothers as the kids, and then Angel as the little brother.
Right.
And things like that, and how that all happens.
That's what I mean. I felt like the Ernest Borgnine, because he was outside the brothel when they were in there.
He does not
waiting for Pike to come out.
Yes.
And then what I also read was that Strother Martin and that guy that he was paired with, PJ or PC or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
Supposedly the subtext there was they were sleeping together as well.
Huh.
So that's what I mean. I think this outfit is good. And they did a lot of scenes of them laughing. Like they would laugh at each other. And there'd be these close-ups of guys just going.
They were loving their lives.
The whole montage at the end is them doing those laughs.
Yeah, because there were parts where they were laughing.
Yeah.
They were finding some kind of happiness in their brotherhood or whatever you want to say. But like, there's also a lot of parades in this movie.
Okay.
Like the scene when they leave the Mexican village, Angel's Village.
Yeah.
They're all like paraded off, and then of course when they finally do the walk thing, which by the way, Peckinpah put that together in the moment.
I know, he improvised the whole thing.
Like originally it was supposed to them leaving and then them showing up in this courtyard area. Yeah. And then he said, no, I want to do a walk thing.
Yeah.
And he basically just said, boom, boom, boom.
Well, when you look at that, everybody's in focus. That's the whole thing. They use a special camera lens so that the depth of field would be that everybody's in focus. Because you can see them walking from the back, and the people that are in front of them, way in front of them, not right in front of them, are in focus as well, just to give them that whole thing of them walking through this army of Mexican bandits onto what they're about to do, which is the big scene.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of great action scenes in this film.
Movie.
But what this film was mostly known for was the violence that was depicted on screen in that slow motion. And you're right, when someone got shot, they felt it. You could see they felt it. They're digging bullets out of each other. They're doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, they're literally, I mean, it's not just falling over. It's some might say an overdoing, but there's like an explosion of blood.
But all in slow motion to just enhance what was going on.
Yeah,
and I think
really
that's really what the film became known for, was the extreme violence and what Peckinpah did. And it was groundbreaking.
It was.
I mean, it was groundbreaking at the time because
he actually, interestingly enough, he was mad when he saw Bonnie and Clyde, because in that ending sequence when they get machine gunned, he was like, oh, Arthur Penn beat me to it.
Right.
Because he had made a couple of films before this, a couple of small movies that were well regarded and did okay. And then he made a movie with Charlton Heston called Major Dundee. Richard Harris is also in it. It's pretty bad. Like it's a mess is what it is. Yeah. And it's called Major Dundee. And it went over budget and over schedule. And when he made The Wild Bunch, he did a good job. One of the things he did was he kept his drinking under control, and he only drank at night, not during shoots and not during the day when he was shooting. And this is what came out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I have to be honest. I shouldn't be reading IMDb facts while I'm watching these, because the one that just I couldn't was William Holden wouldn't grow a mustache. He didn't want a mustache.
Oh, really?
And Peckinpah wanted him to have a mustache. So that mustache he's wearing is fake.
Really?
And you can see that there's scenes where it's popped up. A mustache doesn't drift away from, unless you have handlebars or whatever they're out here. And I'm like, oh, I should have never read that, because now I can't.
Now you can't not see it.
And I love William Holden and Ernest Borgnine. I mean, they really, you can see why this movie did what it did with the violence and the camaraderie that it built. It's the same year as Butch and Sundance, too. 69 was Butch and Sundance as well.
Butch and
right? And this sort of has the same, it's guys that are basically bromances. And, they go out in a blaze, both of them. Both movies go out in a blaze.
Yeah. And that's
in a Mexican, place that
Butch and Sundance was technically in South America, but
right, Butch
they
and
were
Sundance.
they went to
Butch
Colombia.
Cassidy. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But But no, but like that's another fantastic film. Now that film takes a much lighter hearted vibe all the way, even into the almost into the very end.
But you don't expect them to get killed.
I mean,
when I was a kid, I mean, I was young when I saw.
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I knew what happens to Butch and Sundance, but like he changes it a little bit. Apparently, they actually just shot themselves.
Oh, right.
That's the story. Is they were stuck in that area.
Yeah,
and they just instead of
That's in that movie, the sequel I talk about, The Blackburn.
Which Blackthorn.
Yeah, Blackthorn, where it's about Butch later,
Yeah.
but they show him shooting Sundance in the head.
Yeah, yeah. And this, but just to touch on this for a minute, like this movie, once again, reading this from his biography, he and his editor, Lou Lombardo, were like in someplace in Kansas where they premiered this thing like to an audience. And Lombardo, his editor, was like, "Oh man, we got to get out of here. I think they're going to lynch us." He's like, "What are you talking about? We got him on the run." And it was just like
God.
he was just like he wanted to like change it and do something completely different and upset.
He
people.
did. From the editing standpoint, they tried a lot of crazy camera angles and flash forwards and mostly flash backwards. Where you but we'll talk about that later when we see another film that came up because specifically someone mentioned how they go into flashbacks with the like Wayne's World did, right? Well, they did that in this one to show Holden with his first wife who got killed by the husband that came home or whatever.
Yes.
He was because of that scene where that's where he gets shot in the leg and that's where his whole leg thing came from.
Yeah. There was a bunch of things. And then Robert Ryan, and we hadn't even mentioned Robert Ryan. Look, if you haven't seen The Wild Bunch, do yourself a favor.
Sure.
Sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
You know what? It's I'm too cynical, and I look at these sometimes, and I'm going, oh, I guess in the moment, I can understand it.
Yeah.
When I look back at it now, and sort of another film we're going to talk about kind of breaks that down as well. But I did enjoy it. I just got caught up in a little bit of the close-ups of guys laughing.
Yeah.
They're throwing the bottle around, and Angel drops it, and William. Oh, by the way, we didn't even talk about. What's his Oates? Who was
Warren
it?
Oates.
Warren Oates.
Oh my God.
I'm like, he's great. He's just great in everything he does.
Everybody in this movie is great.
Yeah.
Even like the guy who plays Angel, Jamie Sanchez, I think that's his name, or Jaime Sanchez is how you'd say it. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in this movie is great. He gets great performances out of all of them.
They probably had a blast on that set.
Dude, well,
I gotta
mean,
believe that
I've read some stuff about, like I said, in reading this thing, man, some of Peckinpah's later works get a little out of control. Like, have you ever seen like Cross of Iron? That's his World War II movie.
No.
Where the German Wehrmacht are the heroes. That's a weird one.
All right. No.
Anyway.
Yeah, he's had some rough ones. All right, so that's not number one, but that's the first one.
Yes.
All right. Here's the next one. Okay. Now this one I'm gonna say is it's Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Stone Cold classic.
This is
the one that I think Tarantino obviously steals from this, including the person who did the soundtrack and anything he does. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you can just see it in his films.
The Hateful Eight.
Yeah. Even Kill Bill. I mean, there's stuff he does that just is a direct ripoff of Sergio Leone.
Oh yeah, and he admitted. I mean, Sergio. This movie is
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Once Upon a Time in the West. You can't read it. Yeah, it is the pinnacle of spaghetti westerns. Like it is the melding of that vibe with just purely artistic precision.
Glorious precision.
Oh God,
the close-ups versus the wide shots. When he decides to go in and do a close-up, when he decides to say, "Well," you talk about just sheer, and the faces he picks to be the actors in these are perfect for all these close-ups that he's doing. Weathered stuff. That very first scene at the beginning at the train station, which sets the whole film up.
I know. It takes like 13 minutes.
It's just,
it's perfect.
Perfect.
I wouldn't cut a second of it.
Yeah, perfect. And then you have Henry Fonda as the bad guy with dark eyes. And it's like, are you kidding me? How did he pull all this stuff off? And it's just, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't have the words to describe what this thing meant to everybody, but I mean, I can say when I watch it, it's one of those that even watching on a TV screen with all the stuff he's doing with the camera.
Yeah. And it's one that I've actually never seen on the big screen and I would kill to.
Yeah.
Like it's one that, it's always kind of like, we live relatively close to the AFI here in Washington, D.C. And, it's actually in Silver Spring, but I'm always kind of on the lookout because they'll do Westerns. And if this thing ever shows up down there, it's going to be, I'll take the day off from work if I've got to.
Yeah. Kind of you got Charles Bronson, you got Obviously, Henry Fonda. You've got
Jason
Jason Robards. Who else? Gabrielle Ferzetti is the woman. Ferzetti, she's fantastic. Oh, no, Claudia
She's
Cardinale is the
Cardinale.
woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just chock full of.
It's just great.
Just great,
And it's
great
beautiful.
acting. A lot of movies have ripped this whole thing off, including Sharon Stone's Quick and the Dead.
Oh yeah,
Kind of basically follows the same.
Yeah.
It's basically the same movie.
It's very similar. Yeah. I love The Quick and the Dead.
It's
Sam
good movie,
Raimi's
good
great.
movie. Yeah,
It's so
good
much
movie.
fun.
He does talk about camera stuff. He
Yeah,
does some
I
camera
know,
tricks that are a
that's
blast.
some great stuff. And once again, with I've said it before on different times we talked about Leone. The extras in this are amazing, and the scene at the end of this movie, where it's like the railroad is coming through, and when you first show up to the town that's been built up around there, it is amazing. His extras are always doing the right thing.
Right. And this shot's also when he comes up over the town from the train station.
Yeah, over the train station.
Where he introduces the town.
It's there laid out in front of you.
It's just an amazing,
Beautiful.
I imagine this is one of them that all early film directors in their early stages of life, if they saw this, it just... if you have that creative spark, and most of the movies we're talking about are ones that directors call out as the ones that said, okay, I have to do that. I got to try to do what he was doing in that, or they were doing in that. And this is definitely one of them. So,
and this is one where, you might say, oh, why didn't we choose The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or something like that? It's funny because all three of those movies seem to push into this one, and in this one, Charles Bronson kind of takes over the Man with No Names. The Clint Eastwood role. Right. We never know his name. They call him Harmonica because he plays the harmonica, but it could have been Clint in this one. In fact, I want to say, it seems like I read somewhere that they asked Clint, but he was kind of like, okay, I've moved past that. I've moved past that or whatever. Yeah. He wanted to do his own projects.
Well, Bronson's great. It's devastating. It's devastating when you find out his backstory.
Oh, it's so good.
And then it's fantastic when he gets his revenge on Henry Fonda.
Yeah.
And Henry Fonda is just so bad and badass. It's
great.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of the. I mean, it's just obviously. I mean, we're not going to say anything that many smarter and more talented directors and everything have said over and over, and including reviewers. But this is one that sticks out as one that it's one you watch like once a year. I mean, you literally put it in, and
even before we were talking about this, it was on the Criterion. I just watched it again.
Yeah,
like I watched it again because it's like, why wouldn't you?
Right.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. And it feels like you were saying, the actors that he picks, you just see their crags in their faces, and they look lived in. They look like they belong there, not like on some set, not some pretty boy coming on the set. That it's they look. And Henry Fonda didn't want to play the bad guy, and someone talked him into it. And then he's the one who decided to make his eyes. He did the contacts to make his eyes black, which is
and he was really upset that, and this happens very early on, but he shoots a kid like a little kid, like. Not like a 15-year-old, but like a 9-year-old kid.
This movie and the last one we just talked about, they're shooting people.
Yeah.
That scene at the end of go back for a second to the Wild Bunch. Yeah. There was civilians everywhere in that thing. They were just blasting.
Yeah,
there was no question about who they were shooting and what they were. They didn't know who they were shooting at in that.
No,
and that's when you talk about killing a little kid in this. I mean, it is, the West was tough, I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean, this guy, he had no compunction, and like, there's a scene where he's like, "Well, now that you've called me," one of his henchmen says his name, Frank. He's like, "Well, now you called me by name," and he shoots this kid. I mean, he would have done it either way, probably. Right. But such a good film, such a great, and Jason Robards is fantastic. The funny thing is so my dad is a big fan of Westerns. He saw this movie when it was originally brought over here, and it was like legitimately like 50 minutes shorter.
Wow.
Yeah. He said when it first came over here, it was a little over 2 hours, and it's like a 3-hour movie. And then he saw it again, like on videotape, and he was like, yeah, there's this whole huge sequence where Jason Robards' character is introduced. It's like he's like, yeah, that was completely gone.
Wow.
Not other stuff was gone, and stuff was shorter, but he was like, that was just one huge chunk. There was like a 20-minute chunk in the middle, introducing one of the 4 main characters.
Yeah.
That was just gone.
Wow. Have you ever seen Once Upon a Time in America? That
Yes.
was Sergio Leone too, right?
Yeah,
With De Niro and James Woods.
James
and,
Woods and a bunch of yeah. I've seen that as
that
well.
was later in his career.
Another movie where he makes this epic movie, and somebody said, "Nah, we can't do that," and they literally cut like an hour and 10 minutes out of that film because that movie was like well over 3.
Wow.
And then I think when it ran here in the U.S., this is all stuff I've read because I only ever saw it in its restored version. Anyway, but yeah,
Well,
that's a great flick too.
I know we can't really add much to this, but that's on our list of one of the 5. So
Sure.
there you go. Once Upon a Time in the West. All right, you ready for 3?
Hit it.
Okay, I want to talk about this one.
Okay.
I mean, we'll talk. I'm not saying I want to specifically say something right now, but I need to talk about this. I just saw this for the first time because of what we're doing.
You really?
I had never seen
You've
it.
never
I've had
seen The
many
Searchers?
people say you need to watch The Searchers.
The Searchers.
So I have it on DVD, and then there was a documentary that the guy who directed L.A. Confidential,
Curtis
Hanson,
Was it Curtis Hanson?
Scorsese, and John Milius were talking about what this film meant to them.
Really?
And that's what I meant by Scorsese saying he went in, snuck in as a kid, and when you see the Vista Vision and you see John Wayne, it changes your brain.
Yeah.
Like it literally changes your brain chemistry, and what makes him want to go do movies. And Curtis Hanson was saying the same thing. Wow. So this one is the most interesting because it's so in its time, and John Wayne. I mean, this is when I think of John Wayne, I think this is the movie. Obviously, it's that very last scene where he walks out the shot with the door.
Sure,
I mean, it starts with that shot. The door opens up into the wilderness where these people are living, and it ends with him walking out with that John Wayne, kind
of that hitch.
Yeah,
in his step.
The hitch. And it's what's solidified John Wayne is the Duke. I know he was the Duke well before this, but this is one that really.
Yeah, this one.
Why don't you explain the premise?
It's really, really basic, simple. Not simple, but it's a very complex story. But it's a simple narrative. The story is that John Wayne is the uncle to I think it's his sister has a family, but he's kind of the rough and tumble guy, and the guy you don't mess with, whatever. And long story short, they're homesteaders out on the plains. They get
attacked by the Comanche.
Yep. So it's maybe not the plains, maybe more closer to the mountains. But anyway, they get attacked by Comanches, and a number of them are killed. And the Duke's niece, she's taken.
Yeah,
she's
the little girl taken about 8 years old.
8 or 9, yeah. And she is taken. And then so John Wayne and his buddy, a younger guy,
Jeffrey Hunter,
they go off.
To search
for her and to get her back.
Well, John Wayne doesn't want to get her back.
Well, we don't know because John Wayne is at this point, not only before but after this, obviously he has become completely just a raging racist against Native Americans, right?
He's not the only one in the film.
No. And he's after this guy named Scar. Yeah. Scar is the leader of this particular band, and he's after this, and he wants to basically get him back, kill him, whatever. And the story takes place over years, many years of their searching for this particular band. And they get into fights, he kills people. And there's this one scene that I always remember is the scene in the wintertime where he just starts killing buffalo.
Right.
He just starts slaughtering them, not for food or anything. But his whole point is, if I kill these buffalo, it's going to cut down their food supply and it's going to weaken them, and that's going to make me stronger, give me an advantage.
And it's his, not his nephew, but he's just the half brother or brother of the girl who got taken.
Something like that.
He keeps calling her sister. He's also a half breed.
Yes,
And John Wayne doesn't like him at first, and then it becomes a father-son relationship that eventually they come together. Although, and then John Wayne ends up saying, "No, we have to kill her because once they're with Comanche." He calls him Comanche, then she's never going to go back. She can't be white again.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, she can't be saved.
Right.
She's forever tarnished.
Right.
And it all comes down to that. And as basically what happens is over the tail of the story is it comes down to, that he's catching up, that, and even though it's been years, you're like, what's he going to do when he finally finds her?
Right.
Is he really going to kill her?
Right.
Well, maybe because he seems pretty angry.
Yeah.
And he seems so
Well, he was going to kill her, but
yeah.
Jeffrey Hunter jumped in front of her.
but then
eventually he goes and gets her and says,
Yeah.
"Okay, Debbie, we're going home."
Yeah, and
that's
he
Natalie
lifts her
Wood,
up.
by the way.
Yeah,
She grows
it's
up into Natalie Wood,
yeah.
looking like a. Yeah, and basically, she was bunked down with another Indian or something. They said once she's with Buck, they kept saying once she's with a Buck, she's never coming back as the girl you knew.
Yeah.
So we gotta. She's that's why John Wayne kept saying we gotta kill. He actually scalps Scar. They don't show it, but he definitely.
Yeah, it's
so there's that. Okay, so you get that. You got.
But then it's also kind of along the lines of the Wild Bunch. He moves on. Like that's the point of when he leaves at the end.
Yeah,
I think it's because he realizes there's no place for him there.
Right. He's a man amongst himself. That was the
but
whole
like
walk
he's
out
just
that
so
door.
he's just you don't just stop.
He's a man out of his time. It's past him.
Yes,
it's past him.
Civilization's
taken over,
which is the same thing in the Wild Bunch. Right. You know the railroad comes and pushes out these gunmen. Basically. Yeah. Anyway.
So okay, so the other thing about this film is obviously it's a John Ford film.
Oh yeah,
and it's shot in VistaVision,
and it is beautiful.
And every film after this is trying to do what John Ford did, which is shoot the mountains, there's shots of just mountains and a tiny person in the foreground or in the background. There's action happening, and he's got the whole vista, literally the vista in front of him, and there's some great tracking scenes of them riding that. There's this attack on an Indian encampment. Yeah. Where the army comes in and John Wayne's on a horse shooting at everything around him, and they're doing that tracking shot past the teepees and all that. That it's just pretty amazing. I just found it again. It's almost so that the caricatures of people, including the guy playing the priest / captain / marshal / and John Wayne just being John Wayne. I can understand if you saw this when you were a little kid and you just looked up to John Wayne and you looked up and you'd have to be changed by this. But it is such it's such an interesting kind of just take on what people thought was a hero.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
and again, we're going to talk about a movie that changes that.
But I mean, I think
purposely.
Yeah, but I mean, I think even at that time they were trying to say. I think Ford was actually trying to say at the time, is Wayne the hero? Is he the hero of this movie?
Yeah, he there are a couple. There's a scene where the cavalry comes in and wipes out a whole. Yeah, kills him pretty brutally.
Yeah,
and is Ford? What does Ford say? And I know Ford was accused of a little bit of racism. I don't know the whole backstory and all that stuff. So he's showing that. And Jeffrey Hunter's kind of us saying, "Hey, why are you killing all the buffalo? Don't do that. These are people. These are humans.
Yeah.
We got to. Of course, he's a half breed, so he has a different take on it.
Sure.
So what exactly was he trying to say? Obviously, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about half the time. So I'm sure there's a whole bunch of meaning in this thing that I completely went over my head because I can't get past how are these guys out for so long. And there's that scene where they get attacked by the guy they sold the gold to, or they gave the gold to, that comes and he uses Jeffrey Hunter as a, like a trap.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It just scenes like that just kind of crack me up.
Well, I mean, I think for one, though, as far as them being out there that long, unlike you and me, Ralph, these are real men.
True.
They know how to live off the land.
Good point.
They don't get their beer in cold bottles, right? No, I'm kidding, of course, but no,
you're 100%.
Yeah, you throw me out there, I'd die pretty quick probably. But no, the idea being that that this is kind of how they lived, And it's funny too, because I remember I had a friend who was watching this movie, or we were watching a Western, and he was saying something about how ridiculous it was that guys were riding on horseback and actually hitting things with their rifles. And he's like, "Oh, that's so stupid. Have you ever shot a gun? You can't do that."
You mean hitting, actually
hitting their target?
Oh, okay.
And I was like, "Well, these guys have been doing it since the characters had been doing it since they were children.
Yeah.
So while maybe they're not as accurate as the movie would show in real life, yeah, you could. You can do that, and guys can do it today.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that they grew up doing it.
Right.
They grew up riding horses, and they grew up shooting rifles. They've grown up doing it. They know how. So in that regard, it's one of those things where it's what I remember the Searchers having almost a bit of cognitive dissonance with the Searchers is that a lot of the characters look like those old-timey Westerns, like those 50s Westerns where they look very clean in some ways, right? Even though the actual story is really dark and
very
raw.
dark. No, even
And, you know,
Vera Miles, who it wants to get married to Jeffrey Hunter, she's a racist too. She's like, no, once that girl is with the once she's with she says once she's with the buck, you're not going to get her back. Your sister isn't coming back, and we should just kill them all. That's Vera Miles. She's all dressed up and looking pretty. Yeah,
and it's like, but even they kind of, I mean, there's some scenes where the Duke has a little bit of stubble, and things like that, and where and that's obviously meant to show that he's out there, but by and large, he's pretty clean, And it's funny because the movie is so dark, but like me growing up with, Westerns from the 70s and the few that came out in the 80s, going back and watching it, it kind of looks like it has that old look about it. Like, when you used to watch like, what was that? El Dorado or Rio Bravo. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Rio Bravo.
No, but like this, the outdoors looks great because it's the outdoors. But once he gets into the wedding scenes and the scenes where they're indoors and stuff, and the little, they come to the little stores and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, then it starts looking stagey.
It does.
And that's okay because really what this movie is known for is John Ford and how he shot it. And of course, John Wayne, as I guess he did a bunch of movies with him. Yeah. And they really adored each other.
Well, they did. I mean, Stagecoach.
Didn't he do Rio Bravo with him?
Rio Bravo was Howard Hawks.
Okay.
But Rio Bravo is great too.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that one someday. Yeah. Anyway, the other thing I was thinking as I'm watching this, and I was watching the other one, the Wild Bunch, is all these guys ended up in the Towering Inferno and all those disasters, like Vera Miles and William Holden, of course, in the Towering Inferno. That's only what, 69, 72, I think the Towering Inferno came out, or was it
it's
later
close
than
by. It's not long.
So all these guys ended up in those kind of films too. It's just it's crazy to see these.
William Holden is like
listen.
But by this point, he's already kind of like, I mean, that's the reason he's in the Wild Bunch.
Older.
He's old,
yeah.
And he's probably half pickled, like literally.
Maybe.
Because I mean, he was a big drinker.
Yeah, they all
big
were.
drinker. And but like he was already old at that point, so to pay him a couple of bucks.
Anyway, that's what I was thinking as I'm watching these.
It is kind of funny though. A lot of those guys.
Yeah, because Vera Miles and who else was in? Let's see,
Towering Inferno.
Oh, and the other thing, the one character in this movie that just cracked me up was that Mose guy, the bald guy that was kind of speaking all kinds of weird gibberish.
Oh,
I just want to sit out front in the rocking chair, and he was kind of, and I guess John Ford was very religious as well. So there's a lot of religion that's strewn throughout this thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his take on it was. And this guy Mose was kind of this babbling kind of weird genius thing that he was saying the things that propelled the plot and stuff, and ended up, I think at the end he ended up with them back in their house, sitting on the rocking chair.
I mean, I wonder if that's this kind of, it's funny, you see those characters, and nowadays you might say, well, is Mose on the spectrum? Or something like that.
Well, he'd be like, William Dafoe always jumps into movies where you like, he's thrown in as this wacky kind of character that, you go, why? Well, he's always in these. That's why, because he's great. He's great at what he does. And maybe this actor was one of those guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, including the guy who played the priest, the preacher guy. I got to believe that he was somebody that was in all these movies all the time. So,
I mean,
but again, I can see the importance of the film, definitely. And when Scorsese and Milius and that other director talking about it, you can see how much it meant to them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is one of those movies that, like, if you're raised on that traditional kind of, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and I keep saying Rio Bravo, even though it's a great film. This kind of almost clean cut kind of Western. Seeing something like that where the main character is ostensibly the bad guy, or at least the anti-hero. He's
definitely an anti-hero. There's no question.
It must have just blown your mind. Plus, it's like aperture after, like the openings, like you walk through the door and there's the other.
No, that iconic stuff. The movie starts like that. The movie ends with that. Yeah. You can't underestimate what just that must have felt like to see that in that. I mean, with Vistavision and as a little kid sitting there, it had to have been just
especially on a screen like that.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm sure those, even small theaters back then held 800 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, all right. Next, Searchers. That was great. It was great. I was giggling a little bit through it, but for the most part, I can see why it's important.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so this is the one that we keep talking about but don't talk about, which is this kind of personifies what Clint felt like he needed to do to talk about all his Western heroes, all the movies he was in.
Right.
And this is also closest to Josie Wales without kind of the, how he takes a protege that wants to be a killer like he is.
Yeah.
This is most close to that film, but a lot more serious. And I just think this one is it won the Oscars, I think. This is a Stone Cold classic.
Oh yeah, it won Best Picture.
Yeah.
And he won Best Director for it. Yeah. And I think what it is about this movie that I liked about this movie, and it reminds me of it so well, is that this is a movie that deconstructs the Western, kind of gives us the reality versus the fiction, even going so far as to put a writer in there.
Right.
The writer who's in there.
To show how things are glorified.
Yeah, exactly.
Myths are started.
And he's like, he's a certain amount of, literary flourish.
Right.
And he's like, no, they didn't call him Two-Gun. They called him Two-Gun because he had a giant dick. And the only offense he ever did was stick it in that whore that Bob liked or something like that. I'm quoting the movie here, everyone. But the point is though, but what he does is, and this is going to sound like an odd comparison, but it's the same thing Wes Craven did with Scream. What he does is he breaks down all of the tropes of the Western, but in the end, he still delivers the goods.
A beautiful Western,
and a great shootout at the end,
Right.
Same thing with Scream. He breaks it all down, but he still makes a slasher movie.
No, I understand.
He still makes a great slasher.
I mean, that's the thing. You watch this, and that thing at the end, in the saloon where they had just tortured Morgan Freeman's character and leaves him out in the coffin, and this whole time you're hearing about this guy William Money who would kill anything, and he killed kids and he says, I've killed just about everything that walks and crawls, including women and children. And so he's basically deconstructing that as well. And then you add Gene Hackman to the mix. Okay,
it's fantastic.
And he's building his house. All he wants to do is build his house.
Little Bill.
And he's an evil prick, and he's the one that ends up killing Morgan Freeman, and that starts this. And then the whole idea that they're hiring him because somebody attacked a sex worker.
And just to add a little flavor, let's throw in Richard Harris just for good.
He was
A Man Called Horse, right?
He was great. He was
so
great.
good too.
So I mean, this one hit a lot of notes for me, and I just this is another one that I watch probably once a year.
Oh, this is a great film.
Because all the lines all the beats and it delivers every single time.
It's funny. Speaking of conversations, so I had a good buddy of mine. He said to me, "Which is harder, Unforgiven or The Wild Bunch?"
Harder? What do you mean harder?
Like, it's a harder movie. Like, who's harder? Like in tougher, badass kind of thing. Well, The Wild Bunch is harder, and he's like, really? And I was like, yes, because in Unforgiven he talks about killing women and children. In The Wild Bunch, you see them kill.
Yeah, no, I mean
it's
and
children.
I guess that would would make it slightly harder.
You see it like there's that scene where I don't want to get back to The Wild Bunch, but that scene where this one sex worker, she shoots William Holden in the back, and he just spins around and shotguns her.
Well, Annie, what's he say when he turns and shotguns her? Bitch.
Right, that's the one. It out.
Yeah, that's 20 years old. I can't believe that.
No, this movie is way over 20 years old.
When did it come out?
Like early 90s.
Let's see.
Like 90.
It
came out like 93. I have
completely lost my ability to
judge
figure
time.
out. Yeah,
I mean, you know what blew my mind the other day? I was listening to a podcast. Oh,
1992.
Even earlier.
Yeah.
Well, the rewatchables, right?
Yeah.
With Bill Simmons.
Yeah.
So I started listening to that a bit.
He's all right. That's a good podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty funny sometimes.
If you like movies, he's pretty good.
So I was listening to that one, and they were talking about Before Sunset. Julie Delpy, Ethan Hawke, right?
Yeah.
And then they did like another one, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset.
There's three of them.
Right, and then Before Midnight. And I remember watching Before Midnight when it came out. Like, anyway, long story short, I was like, oh, they did one every 9 years. I didn't realize that was in 2013. They're past due for another one. I mean, I think they're going to stop at the 3, but like, it was just one of those things where I was like, where the hell did the last 12 years
As
go?
you get older, just time means nothing.
Like,
it's a circle. Like, it's literally a circle.
Now, don't get me wrong. We lost a solid 2.5, 3 years to COVID, but still.
Yeah, that kind of messed us up.
Yeah.
What else about Unforgiven that we haven't said? I mean,
this Clint won Best Director. He won Best and it won Best Picture that year. And I think it deserves it. At least, it's funny. I read an article that said, well, you got to give the guy Best Director because you're never going to be able to give him Best Actor, which I think is a little short shrift. I like Clint.
I do too.
I mean, Clint does his thing.
Yeah,
and
he does it very well.
I mean, he does it
and he was
extremely
great
well.
in this. I don't understand.
He was great
I don't
in
know who
this,
he was
yeah.
up against, but he also surrounds himself with all these great.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't even know if he was nominated for Best Actor. But I mean, when you go back and you look at the number of movies that guy has directed, there's a lot of really great
well,
ones
he just
in there.
did Juror number 2. He just did. How old is he? He's like 80.
Yeah, he's like a million.
And Ridley Scott's 87, still wanting to make movies. These
I
guys
know.
are crazy. I don't understand how they keep pumping these things out.
I know.
I think it's like with him and like even Ridley Scott, he's got a crew around him. It's a machine.
Oh yeah, they
It's
know
the
what
same
they're
people
doing.
over and over and over, and he does the same thing, and it's just this is one of the best, and it is a deconstruction of the West because there is a lot of reality in there. It's brutal, it's violent. That one kid they're up in the they're up in the hills and they shoot him and he's having he goes, just drag him out, just get him out of there. He was even sick of what was going on.
He's like, we're not going to shoot you, just give him some water or something like that.
Let him die in peace.
And it's true because I think one of the things is that we got used to is the idea that you get shot and you drop dead.
Right.
And if you get shot in the stomach, most people understand it takes a long time to die.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, what's next?
I don't know.
I think I know.
I think I do too.
There it is. All right.
This movie.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this is the one film we've watched so far that is at least ostensibly a true story.
Ostensibly a true story. It's based on a true story.
Well,
Tombstone. OK Corral. Everybody knows the story.
These were
Wyatt
all
Earp.
real people.
They all definitely were real people.
They were all real people.
And Wyatt Earp and who did
Doc Holliday.
Doc Holliday, the brothers. This movie is like a true Western in the sense of it's so good. And it didn't start off like that. It was a rough one, and I think Kurt Russell ended up directing it. He did take over from the director. And he ended up finishing the movie. Yeah,
because the guy who directed this, Cosmatos or whatever his name is, he's the guy that directed. I think it was Rambo 2.
Yeah, no, I know he's a good director, but they were having trouble on the set, and ended up Kurt was like, okay, someone said Kurt needs to take over, and
has he ever directed anything?
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He's grown up in Hollywood.
Yeah, he's been around.
He was
forever,
the computer that wore tennis shoes.
So this is just this is a film that again. It's one I watch once a year, just for Val Kilmer alone. Val Kilmer is just amazing as Doc Holliday. His take, the way he plays him, and then Kurt Russell's over the top Wyatt Earp, which is great when he
really
decides
he's over the top.
What's that line he does at the train station? If you hell's gonna fall,
and
come
hell's
at
coming with me,
Okay, but that's good. That's what the movie should have. And then the bad guys in this are as good as the good guys.
Oh yeah, they're great. Powers Booth,
and Johnny Ringo,
Michael Biehn.
Yeah. Johnny Ringo's the name of John Wayne in one of his movies was Johnny Ringo.
I think Johnny Ringo was a real guy.
Right.
I mean,
I think Wayne played him.
Yeah, interesting.
But Michael Biehn was great as Johnny Ringo.
And the guy who plays. Oh gosh, the guy who plays the really sniveling
Clive.
The guy who plays the one
Clamper.
Yeah. The guy who plays the really sniveling dude.
Yeah, the one who ends up starting he's a coward basically.
Yes.
Ike Clanton.
Thank you.
Played by
that guy.
That guy who does all of James Cameron's. He was in Avatar, and he played in Don't Breathe.
Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name. I can get his name right now if you want me to get it.
But that's it. This movie. You know what is also great about it? This movie is one of those films where it just feels like the actors and the way that they portray their character. I mean, Sam Elliott's in this movie. We've got about Sam Elliott.
By the way,
Bill Paxton.
All the mustaches were real.
Really?
They all grew this stuff for the movie.
Nice.
So they all got into it. Totally. Yeah. So
now the funny thing is too is that when you take this movie,
Charlton Heston was in this one.
Yeah, and then you compare it to.
Don't say Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
Don't say Wyatt. I have that movie on. I got a big special edition. Wyatt Earp, Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp, Dennis Quaid played.
Doc Hollywood. And you know what?
Holiday.
It's not that movie's bad per se. It's just when you compare the two, it's like
It's night and day.
There-
Well,
yeah,
it's,
there's
you know,
ones-
Costner being very serious about it.
Yeah, yeah.
This movie's, it's not that Tombstone is not serious. It is.
Yeah, it's totally
You know,
serious.
people are dying. His wives are getting hurt. Bill Paxton gets
killed.
killed, which, you know, so there is some seriousness in this. It's just two different takes on the
Yeah.
same story. And I have to say, I think Val Kilmer's portrayal really just puts this thing over the top.
It does.
And it takes it to a level that, and it shows the level of their friendship that that really sells the film. And there's that scene at the end in the sanitarium or wherever he was that they, and you can see the love that they had for each other, and they portrayed it well.
There's that great line with those two other, you know, gunfighters, or you know, just wild men, whatever you want to call them, and where he's like, "Doc, why are you out here doing this?" He's like, "Well, Wyatt Earp is my friend." He's like, I got lots of friends. I don't.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously that's not a good line read. And he's fantastic in this film. He really is. And this is one of those ones where you look back and you go, you think sometimes, this is where sometimes you look at something like the Academy and you go, they just weren't thinking about this movie in any way, shape, or form. And there was probably no push. You know, there was probably no push by the studio to go, hey, take another look at Val Kilmer in this film. He's pretty fantastic.
I don't know why they would, you know, it doesn't make any, I guess it was too, they felt it was too light or something. I don't know. Maybe because the original director, I can't put my finger on why they wouldn't look at this and go, well, you know, it is because it's Stone Cold. I keep saying the five that we've shown, I think are all Stone Cold classics that are going to go down. I mean, there's lines in here that, you know, I'm your Huckleberry, you know, the way he's flipping his guns around, and even Michael Biehn as Ringo is just fantastic.
And then there's you know,
and Powers Booth too.
Yeah.
Who I just
he's great.
Yeah.
And it's so funny too, because in this film, it's like I just love the end of this movie. Like, you know, it's like they talk about him and Dana Delaney and everything. And then in the final line is just, you know, they were talking about how, and it's crazy when you think about it. Like they said, you know, Wyatt Earp didn't die until like 1924 or 26.
Lasted a long time.
And they were talking about how guys like, you know, William S. Hart and Tom Mix were pallbearers, and the guy, you know, and Robert Mitchum is the guy that does the what do you call it?
The voiceover.
The voiceover.
Narration?
Yeah, he does the narration. Yeah. Charlton Heston shows up. I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah,
it's really hard to beat this film.
Stephen Lang played Ike Clanton.
Stephen Lang, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, he's done a lot. He's been around a while. He was in Manhunter. He played the reporter in Manhunter. Remember Manhunter, the first time we see Lecter? Yeah.
The Michael Mann film?
Yep. He plays the reporter.
What?
Yep.
That's he plays Stephen the Lang. Reporter?
Yep.
Are you sure?
I am 99.9% sure.
I'll have to double check because
I'll go right now. Go ahead. I mean, what do you mean? I mean, how can you? Why don't you believe me?
I believe you. When
did Manhunter came out in 1995? 85. I'm sorry, 85.
Yeah.
So let's see. If I go down to 85, we got to go a long way. He's done a lot of movies.
Oh gosh, this guy's a worker, man.
Yeah, look at these.
I mean, maybe he does. Man.
No, it's definitely. If it isn't, I'll quit. I'm not gonna quit. Yep. Freddie Lounds. He played Freddie Lounds.
He plays Freddie. Yeah. That is amazing. Like they do not look.
Well, because he beefed up as he got older. He beefed up.
Yeah.
He was a skinny little shit in that movie. Slimy, and he was great.
Oh yeah, he was great.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go.
Crazy.
So Tombstone is one definitely that we both highly recommend.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, I recommend all five of these, even The Searchers, just because of what it is.
Let me put it this way, man. This is like if you're like, oh, I haven't seen a lot of Westerns, these are five you need to check out. Even though we may have spoiled some of these.
Well, there's a whole. I mean, there's so many. Any category we do. Yeah. You can only scratch. We're only scratching the surface.
But these are really.
These are ones, like I said, these are ones that I probably watch. Not Searchers for sure. Wild Bunch either. But the current ones that I picked: Unforgiven, Tombstone, and
Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time. Those are ones I'll watch once a year.
Oh yeah.
And Tombstone, I'll actually, as I'm editing, I'll put that on because I love every beat of it.
Yeah,
and
it's great.
You know, it has
really
a certain
great.
rhythm, and and Kurt Russell is just fantastic. So yeah, well there you go. That's our quick recap of five Westerns that we find, and we'll do this every once in a while. And I don't know, we'll do another five on something else, and
figure it out.
We'll talk. Some of us will talk well about it. Some of us will just not. So yeah. So that's a good one. Any ideas for another some kind of 5 you want to do?
Well, I thought of one, but I thought that might be too niche. Maybe when we start scraping the bottom of the bucket, I was going to say 90s Gen X movies.
What, like Reality Bites, that kind of thing?
Yeah, you guys just did Singles. That's what kind of got
Singles,
me.
yeah, we did Singles.
And Singles, when I watched your show on Singles with you and Maria, I rewatched it again because it was on whatever, and it just made me go, I kind of missed that. I was in
really.
Well, I was
Could
in my.
you pick 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And pick 5.
I'll think. Yeah. I mean,
That's a good one.
Like I just mentioned, like Before Sunset. With Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
Reality Bites, maybe. It's funny. I have a kind of a
That's
love.
the first one I went right to.
See, the thing is that I think Reality Bites was like them. I think that was the studio actually trying to cash in on it.
Maybe.
Even though, don't get me wrong.
They have a guy in there? Isn't Ben Stiller playing like a
he is.
like a studio stooge who
who's trying to cash in on stuff. Yeah.
Right. So,
and don't get me wrong.
Very meta.
It has the 2 most Gen X people on the planet, Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke in it.
Right.
So that and then you throw in Janine Garofalo, and that's basically the Gen X.
All right. Well, you send me
I'll
ones.
Send you some lists, yeah.
I'm thinking too things like we could do a 5 of 5 famous directors' movies that bombed.
Oh, ooh.
Take that flip on.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Right, like Steven Spielberg's 41. You think like that. There are movies that are right. So we could do stuff like that.
I've never actually sat all the way through 1941.
I saw that in the movies. I went to the movie to see that because he did Jaws. It's like it's John Belushi's in there too.
Yes,
so,
I know. It's going to be hysterical.
It's going to be hysterical.
And
anyway, that's another one we could try. Like
you see, if you were going to say Steven Spielberg movies that didn't do well, I'm going to pick Empire of the Sun because
What do you mean not didn't? I'm saying that bombed. Didn't Empire of the Sun do okay or it bombed?
No, it bombed.
Oh, really?
I mean, it won some awards because it's an amazing film.
Yeah.
But nobody went to see it.
Yeah. He's got a bunch of those, though.
He's actually got quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, but I want to mix it up and pick 5 directors.
Okay.
But that's...
Yeah.
We'll do...
We can figure out
We'll do
some
the Gen
stuff,
Xer first. So.
Well, we could... I mean, there's plenty we could do. We could do science fiction. We could do spy thrillers.
Yeah.
We could do...
Yeah, anybody wants to comment.
Yeah.
Anybody
throw out
anybody out there? Hello, anybody out there? Maybe get some suggestions.
Exactly.
So
open it. We're taking suggestions.
Yeah.
No guarantee.
No guarantee.
But we'll take suggestions on.
All right, let me make sure nobody's around before we
exactly.
So cheers.
Cheers.